Good evening, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Therefore, make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable, or on the Facebook event page for episode 103, Charity. As for introductions, you know me, I'm John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957, currently sitting as junior warden this year. Just came from a fellowcraft degree, so I made it, yay. And what else? And that's who I am. So I will move over to Jason Richards for introductions.
Hey everybody, Jason Richards from a secret undisclosed location today, Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia.
Thank you, Jason. Nick, will you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I am Nicholas Gaius Julius Augustus Caesar Johnson, past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time Farmington.
And last but not least tonight, I think RJ is out at a Masonic event. Juan Sepulveda, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Juan Sepulveda, and I am the host of the Winding Sayers Freemasonry podcast, as well as the artist behind FreemasonryArt.com. Oh, and Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 is my lodge.
There you go.
Sydney, Florida.
Very cool. All right, gentlemen, let's move right into Masonic news for this week. We have a few very cool items to mention. If you've been listening to the past couple episodes, we did announce that March 19th we will be in or about Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, where the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, specifically their Academy of Masonic Knowledge, is sponsoring all 5 of the Masonic Roundtable hosts to attend their Academy of Masonic Knowledge event on, as we said, Saturday, March 19th at the Freemasons Cultural Center at their Masonic Village, their Masonic home. Apparently it's bigger than just a Masonic home. Apparently it's like one of the another wonder of the Masonic world, apparently. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. If you wish to attend, they do recommend that you register ahead of time. They will do things on the spot, but they need a head count for catering and all that. So to pre-register, you can check out the link that we have on our show notes at theMasonicRoundtable.com. But specifically, this link we're looking at is pamasons.org/academy. That's pamasons.org/academy. Go there, check it out, let them know you're coming. We can't wait to see you. There is a small cost to cover lunch, and business attire is, well, dress is coat and tie. There you go. So there's no ambiguity there. They prefer coat and tie.
Hey John, have we heard back as to whether or not EAs and fellowcrafts can attend?
I have not received any confirmation yet. According to this link, it says that all Masons are welcome to attend.
So
if you take the literal interpretation of that, you are a Mason once you become an entered apprentice.
If you're an EA or a fellowcraft, come join us. It'll be a good time.
You know what? Even if they kick you out, we're going to have a good time after hours.
That's fair. We'll have stuff going on after the event, so you all won't want to miss it.
That's fair.
Guarantee it.
Yes, we don't walk away at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll be there with bells on.
Yes.
Very cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys there.
It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. Jason, will you talk about the winners of our Sparklight campaign?
Sure. Hey, John, could you screen share the link that I put in the show notes?
I'm on it.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, just an update for the Sparklight campaign winners. I know we announced that back last month. Yes, because it is February now. We announced it back last month that we had 3 winners for the Sparklight campaign. We had one grand prize winner and then 2 runners-up, and each of the winners were to receive a free copy of Fellowcraft's new album, Get Up Young Phoenix. Fellowcraft actually announced their album release yesterday, congratulations to those guys. And all three of those winners, Chris, Ed, and Luke, you all should have an email in your inbox with a link to your very own free digital copy of Fellowcraft's new album, Get Up Young Phoenix. They're doing an album release party in the DC area on March 5th, so go ahead and check out more on www.fellowcraftband.com. They've got some really great stuff. Please go and take a listen and help some brothers out, because they're doing a lot of fun stuff, and they've got a pretty good grungy sound. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, I know Jason's heard it. I know I've heard an early version of it, so it's out now. I really like it because I'm a kid of the 90s, and I grew up during the grunge sound, and it really brings me back to that. And it's not in a it's not too hard. It's not, you know, smashing guitars hard, but it definitely has a very comforting feel to their style of music.
It's a very gritty Nirvana mixed with Eddie Vedder.
Okay, I like that. That's a good summary.
Yeah, and
Does that sound a lot like Creed?
As long as it's
not nearly as annoying as Scott Stapp happens to be. I'm going to get sued for that comment. But no. Hey, and you know what? We're actually going to have the band members from Fellowcraft on a later episode of TMR, so we're working with them to get a date locked down. And they're going to talk about masonry and music and how their lives in the craft influence their what they do on the stage. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Please go check them out and support those brethren. They're doing some great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Next in Masonic news, let's talk about something we're not allowed to talk about: politics. What does Masonry have to do with politics? Well,
everything.
If
you're in France.
If you're a part of the Illuminati, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. However, this came across in one of my Masonic groups on Facebook. I tracked it down. Glenn Beck was sharing a video where he was handing out for people to feel and touch the original George Washington compasses, of his surveying compasses, to the likes of Brother, who was made a Mason at site, Richard Dreyfuss. Also, and as I was doing a little bit more homework and researching about this, he was there in Iowa for the backing of the Ted Cruz campaign for the presidential run, and apparently there's even a shot here of Glenn Beck handing George Washington's compasses to Ted Cruz as well. So I think it's kind of fascinating. If you see the video won't translate well to the podcast here. But we do have a link embedded on theMasonicRoundtable.com where you can see the video of Richard Dreyfuss receiving and feeling the power. It's really kind of inspiring because his facial expressions just tell it all. It's a very I wouldn't say somber moment, but you could feel history in your own hands there. So that was really kind of neat. And so Glenn Beck apparently has bought the compasses. I found one news article, I can't find the source. He apparently paid around $56,000 or so. So these are it's his copy now. It's not it's not a museum artifact. So he feels free to do whatever he wants with it and let everyone touch all over it. But I think it's kind of cool. I mean,
Mark Tabbert, you have failed us.
Our artifacts of history are...
GW Masonic Memorial should have that.
That is true.
It belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum.
So do you.
So, the comments were kind of interesting all around Facebook and some of the other threads about, George Washington wouldn't have wanted that, blah, blah, blah. But, everybody knows what George Washington would have wanted.
Well, and Brother Dreyfuss, he actually runs the Dreyfuss Initiative, which is a nonprofit initiative to try to promote civility in politics, particularly the teaching of civics in K through 12, bringing that back. And so I think that's something that he's been pushing is this idea of civics, and that actually does fit fairly well within a Masonic context. The idea that you can be civil with other people even when you're disagreeing. So I think that makes sense in a lot of ways. So.
Very cool. Now, any other discussion on that piece of history, our Masonic history, out there on the campaign trail?
Defiled for generations to come.
Yes, indeed. I don't care where you stand. I don't know if compasses should be out just being flaunted around like that.
Yeah. Crews tried to kiss them, and they just, it was like a magnetism. They repelled themselves away from it.
Oh, gosh. Cool. Moving on to the next topic. Nick found this article. Nick, do you want to talk about this Armada group?
Sure. Do you want me to screen share it?
If you have it up and ready, sure.
I do. All right. So this is the Armada group. It's in Devonshire, which is a provincial Grand Lodge under the United Grand Lodge of England. And it's this group that is to promote, bonds of Freemasonry with newer Masons. And I just, I was reading through it and I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. But, it's like they've got this really awesome picture up here, people having fun and doing stuff like that. And then they have the, I think, Assistant Provincial Grandmaster's picture. And it was just kind of this strange, I don't know, age difference that kind of threw me a little bit. It's like, okay, so we're promoting this, and then it's like, but let's look at a real picture of a real Mason, and I'm like...
There's women, too, so...
Yeah, and I totally gotta agree with these kind of initiatives because, to be honest, not this forcing of, oh, young guys, you should hang out together. Totally, man. But
radical.
It's like you sit there and go, oh Lord, really? Again? Okay. So yeah, I totally get that, but I don't know. There's other ways to do it, I think. But you know what? It's okay that they're trying it out. I mean, the York Rite has this emerging leaders program that they're always pushing all the time, and I've not actually gone, even though I've been invited a few times, but it's one of those on your own
So
dime
according
kind of thing.
according to the website here, it says they're targeting newer Masons, preferably those who have not yet served as worshipful master.
Yes. And so
Not yet jaded.
Yeah, exactly. Not yet jaded. Not destroyed.
Well, it's an interesting idea because it's really a new member retention initiative, right? Trying to give new members a reason to stick with the fraternity for the long haul. At least that's the way I see it, and I know that's kind of just a little one-note box, and there's more to it. But I feel like everybody's trying their own way to keep and retain members, whether it's through education or more social events, etc., getting the family involved.
And it kind of begs the question that the lodge itself is incapable of getting these initiatives going themselves just by existing as a lodge. It's kind of sad that we have to create...
We need direction from the provincial Grand Lodge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, thank you, overlords, for helping us.
Well, here's a question. Does the fact that the worshipful master typically only serves one term, unless you're in a non-progressive line lodge, of course, hamper larger initiatives that might necessitate several years to spin up and execute?
Strategic planning, right?
Yeah. It's a thought.
It's a thought.
Not a sermon. Just a thought.
There you go. But I do applaud the effort, right? We don't know until we try. I think it's worth trying these types of things, and the most important aspect of this is measure it. See what works. If it doesn't work, kill it. If it works, great. Keep doing it. Just that simple. Okay, then. I think, Nick, we're ready for your wonderful words of wisdom from the Masonic Monday question.
On Tuesday.
Oh, boy. Well, I was gone last week because of technical problems, Frontier, but, I would never blame any phone company, Frontier, for any kind of internet problems, Frontier. So with that, we will get right into the question. Now, for what you guys don't know is that I do this Monday Masonic question, and we've hit question number 500. So it's kind of a big deal, you know. I mean, yeah. So imagine every week having a new question. That's 500. So that's like 10 years almost, right? Well, 8 years. So you know, we've been doing this a long time. So I will read off the correct answerers. Is that I don't know. All right. So Justin Miller, Willem Kosen, Christopher Croto, Jonathan Primo, Bill Garrison, Larry Fama, Frank Scrobet, Ryan Freeman, Michael Laidlaw, Joey Boyer, Simon Dick, Heath Erskine, James Webb. Congratulations, you got it right, which was the Little Red Schoolhouse, which at the time was called the Eureka Masonic College, where Rob Morris, poet laureate of Freemasonry, created the Order of Eastern Star in 1850. The Order of the Eastern Star is currently headquartered in Washington, D.C., at the International Temple, formerly known as the Perry Belmont House. So congratulations, guys. All right, so now the question I did, because this is kind of, it started off as a Minnesota-centric question. I decided I was going to go with a Minnesota-centric question, but I'm going to ask you guys to either answer the one I'm going to ask, or I'm going to ask you to do research on your own Grand Lodge. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so the Masonic Monday question for the week of February 1st, 2016. The early era of Minnesota Masonry is a fine example of how our gentle craft formed in the pioneer days of the American West. Your questions: who presented the resolution to form the Grand Lodge of Minnesota, and what office did he hold in the Grand Lodge of Minnesota? In what now famous location was the first newly chartered lodge? Not the lodges that originally formed the State Grand Lodge, but the first newly chartered lodge by the Grand Lodge of Minnesota according to its charter. And then bonus, upon the death of the aforementioned presenter of the resolution to form the Grand Lodge, this famous sovereign Grand Commander ordered all the bodies of the obedience to be draped in mourning for 60 days in honor of this past Inspector General. Name him. All right, so that's the Minnesota-centric question. You can answer that one. Or your other question, if you want to answer that one, is how was your Grand Lodge formed? Which lodges came together to form your Grand Lodge? And from where? And also, if you can include their charter dates and the original number that they were given. You can send your answer to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, your lodge number, and the hashtag 500. Back to you, John.
Congratulations on reaching 500. And no, that's not 500 here. We've only reached episode 103. But that's great that you've carried on that legacy and continued the Masonic education that we obviously value.
Exactly. Oh, I you know what? And I totally forgot. If somebody answers it on the Facebook page,
what will happen?
It's really sad, but they will not allow Deadpool to be in theaters in the United States.
No!
They won't. They said they'll just be a Chinese-only release. So don't do that to us, guys. Don't do it.
Or the PG-13 release that they're getting.
It'll be be PG-13. It'll be PG.
Oh, it'll be PG.
It'll be animated, look like Secrets of NIMH.
Disney's supercut, yeah.
They're just going to supercut everything from X-Men Wolverine Origins.
Now, I want to see you fact check all these guys that write up how their Grand Lodges were formed.
Yes.
I want to see you deny people. Well, actually, you got this lodge's name spelled incorrectly.
Well, and you're right, there are certain Grand Lodges that were formed in dubious manners, and I know which ones those are. So we'll see how well they know their own Grand Lodges.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much, Nick. let's get into this week's topic, the topic of charity. We are at episode 103. After our big episode 100 on racism, the craft, we began a three-part series on the three theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. We talked about where they came from, we've talked about faith, we've talked about hope, and now we're culminating in charity because, as 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, the greatest of these is charity. Let's talk about charity. Let's assume that Masons, as good men who are made better men through the progressive science that is Freemasonry, exude charitable actions, right? That as a nature of who we are and the moral lessons we are taught, we have come to be known and focus our lodge attention on charitable works. Is that a good thing? Jason, I see you're chomping at the bit here.
Well, yes, and we've said this in previous shows. Charity is a natural extension of the sanctification process of Masonry, right? You have a fraternity full of men who are good men trying to make themselves and each other better men, and a natural outcome of that process is simply to be more charitable of an individual. Now, what's interesting, and I know we're going to get to this soon.
Don't spoil it.
I won't spoil it. It's interesting because your perspective changes depending on the definition of the word.
That's a good summary there.
So, but if you look at charity as in charitable organizations giving back to your community, then the Masons are right there. Living their communities as good men, good citizens, very active in their communities, as I think a natural outcome of the process of Freemasonry.
All right, I'm going to let Juan and Nick chime in on the proud aspects of the charitable contributions that their lodges or that their brethren have exuded before I get to the big reveal, because this is my soapbox. Juan had his soapbox last week. I'm ready for my big soapbox.
We're not going to talk for the rest of the episode.
Oh, I did way too much homework.
Without spoiling anything, if we're thinking of the word charity and we're thinking of that contribution towards someone else in need, where we're being selfless, there's one aspect that I think it's important that we touch upon, and it's the fact that you cannot give what you don't have. So, in my opinion, and this is a thread that I'll continue later on in our conversation as the topic develops. It is important that we don't look at taking care of ourselves and our household first. We shouldn't look at that as being selfish. Part of the process of us having the capacity to help other people in their moments of need is for us to have a solid self. That you cannot get sick enough to make another person healthy. You have to focus on your own health in order for you to be able to take someone who is ill and help them recover. Same thing goes for financial difficulty, participation, enthusiasm. A lot of things are in that same thread. And later on, I want to talk a little bit more about it. But I think that thinking of charity, keep that part in mind. Taking care of yourself and your household is a form of charity, because you are contributing to your betterment so that you can later on contribute to other people's betterment.
Well, that's kind of like that. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
It's
Jason.
kind of like Acacia Lodge, my lodge. We are planning to be debt-free this year for the first time since 2006 because our lodge flooded. Insurance didn't pay for it, and we had to take out a loan from a very, very friendly, very helpful neighboring lodge. So over the past, I guess 10 years now that it's been, we've been focused very, very much on getting our house in order financially and paying down that debt as much as possible, at the expense perhaps of charitous outreach to the community. Mm-hmm. And not perhaps, it has been at the expense of the community. But now that we have our own house in order this year, we're working to expand our outreach into the community and our charity among the Clifton Centerville community.
Excellent. Nick, you want to add to that?
Sure. And at my lodge, we've kind of got this concept of charity where it's both community outreach, but it's also internal. And so we have a scholarship fund, obviously. I mean, a lot of lodges have that. We also have a cemetery, which is something that most lodges don't have, but we have one of those. And it's kind of interesting for me to explain to people, because this is, we've had this discussion all the way back to the episode about elevator speeches, is how exactly do you discuss Freemasonry? It's kind of interesting. You'll have the idea of, well, we're a charity, and I had the worshipful master two before me. He would use that line all the time, and it was always difficult for me to kind of say, well, yeah, but we're more, And so it's the one thing that we do that's externally seen. People see it outside more than anything else that we do. But there's so much more involved in charity, and obviously John wants to jump into this in a different way, or not a different way, but more expanded. So I'm going to not steal from him. But for me, it's one of those that it's internal and external, just like we discussed with everything else. And it's just really, at least in my lodge, it's been kind of nice how we function that way, where we, open it up to the community, but at the same time, we're not afraid to help our own, if that's understandable. So.
Completely. And I think
that's why we have almoners as well. Okay, you can talk now, John.
Can I talk? No, it's good.
You're going to talk the rest of this episode.
Pretty much. As we can tell, the fraternity has a long history, very passionate history of giving back and taking care of others. That's what good men do. But here's where the point where I'm going to quote Albert Mackey in his section of the Masonic Encyclopedia on charity, where he says, "We must not fall into the too common error that charity is only that sentiment of commiseration which leads us to assist the poor with pecuniary donations. Its Masonic as well as its Christian application is more noble and more expansive, more extensive." So what he's alluding to is that the definition of charity as we use it in our context, specifically faith, hope, and charity, if you find the root cause of that, or the root origin of that, we've talked about 1 Corinthians 13:13 for the past 3 episodes, and charity is used in other aspects of the King James Bible, which most of Freemasonry is based upon. So how did King James, the King James edition, come to this definition of charity? Because for any of you, the newer translations of the Bible, you'll find that to be translated differently, specifically faith, hope, and love. So how do you go from charity to love? Right? You're not supposed to change the Bible. Or why is that an aspect that's so different? Jason, you got something to jump in with?
Error in biblical translation.
Well, actually, I got
King
look at
James
this.
version only, baby.
Yes, it's gospel, right? You can't change it. King James version. I've done Bible study with both King James and with a modern translation, and gosh, it was so hard to do. It really was. It was painful, but I learned a lot because I had to deconstruct how poorly constructed it was as compared to more modern editions. But I wanted that that Masonic experience of reading the King James Bible. So later on in his article on charity, Albert Mackey alludes to that this is not a new thing, that this misinterpretation or the redefinition of love into charity, that this has been brought up and mentioned by John Wesley. So I did a little Google searching, and I found there's a Sermon 91 from John Wesley, who's a very popular Methodist minister who only lived into the 1790s. He has a whole sermon on charity. That's the title, On Charity, to which he deconstructs the word charity. Now, this is a really fascinating concept here, where he breaks it into three sections. The first section is trying to define where did this term charity come from. So I'm going to read an excerpt here that I find fascinating because it's still relevant today. He says, the first Bibles I've seen wherein the word was changed were those printed by Roger Daniel and John Field, printers to the Parliament, in the year 1649. It was love in previous editions, and it was changed to charity in 1649. Hence, it seems probable that the alteration was made during the sitting of the Long Parliament. Probably it was when the Latin word charity was put in the place of the English word love. It was in an unhappy hour this alteration was made. The ill effects of it remain to this day, and these may be observed not only among the poor and illiterate. Not only thousands of common men and women no more understand the word charity than they do the original Greek, but the same miserable mistake has diffused itself among men of education and learning. So,
1760.
In 1760, when he was preaching these sermons, he compiled these texts of his sermons, and again, he only lived to 1791, so I'm going to say ballpark around 1760. He observed that the misuse of the word charity back then. And yet, because Freemasonry adopts the King James Version, I find it kind of lazy that we have, over the years, adopted the more modern definition to explain what we do. And look, since I'm on a soapbox here, and since I'm going to talk for the rest of the episode, according to Jason, I find it kind of irresponsible as well that, John Wesley says the same mistake has been made among men of education and learning, and I still see Grand Lodge publications that will use faith, hope, and charity, and they will describe charity as the act of giving to those less fortunate, without any allusion or alliteration to, not alliteration, any nod to the original definition of the term. So it's not just any kind of love. So let's shift gears now. Jason, I think you might have to mute your mic, getting some feedback. Getting some feedback from one of you. Okay, that helped. It's not just any kind of love, though. We talk a little bit about brotherly love as one of our tenets in the fraternity. But to find out what the original source was, because it wasn't modern English in the original New Testament, the letters from Paul were originally in Greek. So we have to go look at the original Greek text of 1 Corinthians 13:13, where we find, faith, hope, and charity. And in the original Greek, the term that was used in that context was agape. What I'm going to do now is talk about, there's 3 different types of love, different Greek words of love in the New Testament. It's hard to translate it to English because all 3, when you put them together, you're just going to translate them all 3 to love, but they have very different meanings. The first form of love is called eros, which is your sexual love or your passionate love. That is where we get erotica from. There's Jason with his heartbeat there. That is purely the physical manifestation of love. Then we have filio, which is where we got to kind of get the term philia when you hear bibliophiles, the people that love to read books. It is more of a term of a close relationship to, a brotherly love to, something that's you have frequent close association with. Like, I love the Masonic Round Table. I love my friends, right? That it's not a sexual love, and it's not a higher love. It's just a friendly love. So last is agape, which is how it's put into that specific text that we get our faith, hope, and charity from. What is agape love? Agape love is a love above all loves. It is almost a spiritual love from the Creator. So we're talking about, we've alluded to in previous episodes, unconditional love. That agape is the very nature of God. Remember, this is a theological virtue. So it's the love from God to us and the love from us back to our Creator. What's interesting is that this is an action verb. This is an action form of love in the sense that it is something you are supposed to bestow to others. It is the act of loving. It is the act of loving unconditionally, right? So it's one of those things, if you need to forgive someone for doing you wrong, you are supposed to exhibit agape to them and say, I forgive you and I'm not going to hold a grudge, and this is my extension of love to you. And so that is a different concept than just being charitable and giving away your donations. As if you go rewind the episode a little bit, you'll hear how by the mere act of agape love, you can give charitable donations. You can be charitable. But that is a byproduct of who we are, of who, if we truly aspire to the Masonic and the gospel idea of agape love, you will truly reach a different level, and that is something that we are taught. With that, I'll step back and let Juan and the others, take the take the attention away from me.
Well, I can continue with the thread that I started with earlier.
Please.
When we look at that word agape, and I'm saying it in how I would say it in Spanish, agape. You have that love that is beyond anything. Now, I want to position this for the brothers to think about it. If the gift that the Creator, the most precious gift that we receive as individuals from the Creator, is our own life, is our own temple. In Masonry, although we've talked about the focus being outward most of the time, we have had discussions where we talk about that the purpose of Masonry is to take that one man and help him become that finished product, help that rough ashlar become a perfect ashlar. So a way in which you can show that appreciation and that love towards God is valuing as much as possible that most precious gift that He gave you. So we show our love for God when we love ourselves, when we love the people around us. One misconception that I came across is that the only way that we can love God is by through worship and through praise. That's like singing and praying to God. That's not the only way in which we show our agape towards God. One of the ways that we do so is by appreciating the preciousness of this gift that we've received and making the best out of it. Just like the parable of the talents, where you have the first person. For those of you who don't know the story, the master gives one person one talent and tells him that he's going to come back for it, and he does that for 3 people. And the first one takes his talent and he buries it on the ground, does nothing with it. The second one takes it and invests it and gets a little bit of return, knowing that the master reaps where he sowed not. So the third one really took it to heart and did everything in his power to maximize the return on investment, basically, from that talent or that precious gift that the master had given him. Upon the return of the master, the one who had buried it in the ground, he got scolded for doing nothing with his talent in that time being. Even the second one, who wasn't as diligent in investing it, he also got scolded. And both the first and second lost all of their talents, even the one that had received a return on investment, and everything was given to the third, because he was the one that really valued the preciousness of that gift and make sure that he maximized the way in which he utilized it. So, with that example in mind, as men and Masons, taking our lives and making the best that we can with it, we will have a bigger return on investment. We can help other people in the process, and we'll be honoring God and showing Him our love through that effort. And I'm off the soapbox.
That's awesome. That's a perfect application of agape. Nick, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, obviously we're using this our contexts, which are mostly Christian, to understand it. But for me, I've kind of backed away from that within Masonry, and I find it as this concept of, as the creator, we have this concept of love of God. So philotheos, which was the virtue of someone who loved God, and then the gods would direct that light back to the person. And so for me, I've always viewed agape, at least in the Masonic context, as this concept of a mirror. So God, the Creator, shines down on us these concepts of charity. I know I just used charity, but caritas, and other things like that. These principles of doing selfless acts for others, so that we can not only shine the light of the Creator down, but that we diffuse that light out. And light could be knowledge, but it could also be the idea of agape, of love for a fellow man. So for me, I think the Masonic fraternity particularly teaches this idea that wherever you're coming from, whatever station, whatever religion you have, or even if you're not religious at all, you're still pulling those lessons from the Creator, bringing them down, and then diffusing them out like a mirror. And so I think it makes perfect sense that we as lodges bandy together and put money together, or have Masonic homes or things like that. It makes perfect sense. I mean, sometimes I think that's misguided. We sometimes get ourselves into hot water because we're trying to be more charitable than we can be. But I think, at least understanding from its very basic idea, is that we're taking love of God, His love to us, our love of Him, and we are diffusing it. And that's, I think, one of the two tenets of Freemasonry, really, is that love of brother, love of man,
Brotherly
and love of God.
Awesome. All right, Jason, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Nick said, and
Ditto.
yeah. No, I mean, it's just, when it gets down to it, we're called as brethren to love our fellow man, and to, again, have that be a verb and not an active verb, but it's just a passive. It's different from saying don't do anyone harm. It's actually, no, do good unto everyone, because every human being has a claim upon your kind offices. So when you get down to it, faith, hope, and charity as core virtues in the Masonic fraternity makes quite a bit of sense, because you have, again, hope in immortality that is a catalyst for faith in God, which leads to wanting to better oneself, and then wanting to be the best person possible to everyone around you. So it makes sense.
So what I will say to wrap up the discussion before we go to social media is I've looked through our called manual work, our portions of our ritual we can publish, and I challenge each of you to nail it. You understand the root meaning of charity and where it came from, and that it's really that agape love. To go back and listen to your Masonic ritual, specifically the Entered Apprentice degree, and some of your opening and closing prayers, that if you really deconstruct the context of charity in the Masonic ritual, you'll see that it is much more compatible with agape than with the donation, the giving of one's things. So go back and listen to that, and then see how that applies to you. Now that you have some different insight into the definition, what does that mean to you? Okay, feel free to share that on our Facebook page or on our website, theMasonicRoundtable.com, because we'd love to hear what new insights you've gained on that. So with that, let's move to social media. Jason, what are they saying on social media?
So we've got Brother Mike from Ohio, who says, one of the biggest mistakes of the modern era in regards to charity is that charity is monetary, and strictly monetary. That's not the only form of love and of charitable giving, and it's not necessarily the best form. To actually love a person to the point where you help them achieve something greater than themselves and get back on their feet, it is a much better way of being charitous.
I'm going to take issue a little bit with that, because money being a time value storage device, essentially, I think in both measures you have to have both the hands to do things and also the money to pay those hands, or at least to get those supplies to people. So I think it's kind of a two-way street in that respect. So I totally agree that you need the hands to be doing things and the hearts to be leading those things, but you also need that storage unit known as money, cash, payola, whatever it is, to kind of get things going.
Yeah, but I think what he's referring to is that the fact that we're limiting our definition of it to money, because you could be lending an ear. There's no money involved in just listening to someone's trouble.
You go shovel snow, like we had this past weekend. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's totally accurate. I think that it is. It's one of those that we can't just limit ourselves to money, but we also can't avoid the simple fact that it gets things done.
What
so
else,
we've got something interesting from Pennsylvania, not from Brother Paul Chamberlain, past master, but from Brother R.J. Hughes. He sent us a picture of something from the Exemplar, which is contained in Masonic Bibles distributed in Pennsylvania. It gives a definition of charity. The definition is the provision of help or relief to the poor, the first tenet of Freemasonry.
Whoa, 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 whoa. This is an official publication that's added to Pennsylvania Masonic
to all
Bibles.
of the Masonic Bibles distributed to Pennsylvania, and I'm screen sharing it now.
There you go. Look at that. There's Jason's. Yeah.
It's.
I'm gonna say it. That bothers me, because that is definitely deviating from the philosophy that was put into the ritual and purpose.
Yeah.
Is it even accurate that it's the first tenet of Freemasonry?
Yeah.
Well, so actually, let me give them a little credit here. Ready? Another definition that I read for agape is brotherly love. So I'll give them that much.
Yeah.
Now, the literal translation in today's parlance would be love like a brother. You feel like you are amongst family when you go to lodge meetings. Not unconditional, I would die for you kind of love, but brotherly love. And so if you take the truest form of brotherly love as it's been defined in other translations of Greek to English, that brotherly love really means almost a divine, unconditional love.
Yeah.
I'll give them that much.
But that's not how it's defined.
Yes, it's not how Pennsylvania added to that.
Yeah. So Brother RJ also gave us a snapshot from his heirloom Masonic Bible, which defines charity as inward and outward acts of love.
There you go.
And there's the question that says, what emphasis is placed upon this virtue by Masonry? And the answer is, like the Apostle Paul in evaluating the three essential virtues of the Christian religion, faith, hope, and charity, Masonry places charity at the topmost round of its mystic ladder. Indeed, charity constitutes the cementing bond of Masonry. In Masonic interpretation, even as in Christian doctrine, charity is broader, longer, deeper, and higher than mere pecuniary aid to the poor and destitute. It includes such help, but its depth of meaning is love, affection of the heart, just as Paul defines genuine Christian love in 1 Corinthians 13. So Masonic love reaches the same heights and depths.
And just to make sure we're on the same page, that is not in the Pennsylvania Bible.
That is correct.
Okay. just making sure.
I wanted to make a quick comment because I'm sure that there's a brother in the car right now rolling his eyes like, oh, these Bible thumpers, they're on the Bible. It's like, listen, brother, we are, most of the research for us has revolved around the things that have been placed in Masonry, and this one coming straight from the Christian Bible as we've discussed. However, if you are of a different faith, if you have a different life experience, and you want to contribute your points of view, whatever it's in your volumes of sacred law, make sure that you let us know. Go to the events page on facebook.com/the Masonic Roundtable, or go directly to theMasonicRoundtable.com and add comments regarding it. Everybody wins when you share your perspective, as opposed to just tuning us out and putting us in the category of Bible thumpers.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the Masonic ritual was influenced greatly by the King James Version and the Old Testament.
That's history. Yeah.
However, a lot of it is also influenced by the Kabbalah and by Enlightenment philosophy and ancient mysteries. So Masonry is really a hodgepodge of the latest and greatest in philosophical thought from the past 900 years. It's just the way it goes.
Well, and yeah, I mean, even the concept of the term agape, when I was doing research for this, even agape itself was adopted and slightly changed to fit a Christian perspective that then was turned into a virtue and to what we have today. So originally it was, even I think Homer discussed it. Maybe that's what, or
Yes.
other places, that it was, this agape was, love of your ancestors and other concepts like that, which was a very important concept as well. To remember your ancestors and remember where you came from, essentially. So it was adopted, changed a little bit too. So our conceptions of love are always changing, I think. But at least in this context, I think we've covered pretty well what the Masonic context is. At least what we think, because we're right. So
There you go.
And those are some of the golden nuggets from social media for tonight.
Great. Good conversation already on Facebook. I did want to say that on Twitter, our friend and brother, past master Richard Ingham, definitely would like to extend an invitation to the next time that his lodge in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, has a Groundhog Day ceremony. He wants to come out and go see Punxsutawney Phil with Masonic brothers. There's certainly an invitation out there.
We could make him a Mason on site.
Even if he's a rodent.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, let's start wrapping up, brothers. We'll start with Nick for final thoughts and shameless plugs.
Sure. I always like to do this where I go back to my Masonic manual in Minnesota to understand it. And in the closing charge here in Minnesota, which sadly is not used as often as it should be, we say to the Mason as he leaves the meeting, these generous principles are to extend further. Every human being has a claim upon your kind offices. Do good unto all. Recommend it more especially to the household of the faithful. By diligence and duties of your respective callings, by liberal benevolence and diffusive charity, by constancy and fidelity in your friendships. And so for me, it is. It's this idea that you are the shining light given to you by the Creator, and you have not just an opportunity, but a duty to do that for others. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be depriving yourself, and we already know that. But it's essential that we befriend brothers, that we relieve them of whatever things that they need, that we think internally within the lodge, that we also think externally outside the lodge, even if that's not necessarily what the lodge, that the lodge is taking part in. Maybe you do it yourself, but that's, I think, the lesson, and I think that this virtue, this third most important theological virtue that we all, as Masons, believe to be important, I think it's actually the thing that wraps everything else up. We're doing these because we all believe in a great Creator, regardless of how we name him, her. But we all believe in the same things, that we should be doing these good things to be beneficial to society. So that's what I always have been thinking about with charity when I was thinking about it this week. So with that, I have a blog, millennialfreemason.com, and I'm going to be doing a new feature on my blog, and it's going to be a monthly response to a certain national publication involving dudes with swords, because I think it needs to happen. So that's what's going to be happening once a month, is me being the opposite dude of that dude. You'll find out when you read my blog.
Stay tuned. Wow. That's hot off the presses right there. Cool. Thank you, Nick. Let's move to Juan for final thoughts and shameless plugs.
Nick, it was nice knowing you, brother.
Yeah.
We'll remember your days as a regular Mason before you got expelled very fondly.
I'll remember you fondly. All right, brothers. I've enjoyed this series. For those of you, if anybody is listening who hasn't listened to the previous theological virtues, do so. I think we've covered some very interesting ground, and these are things that are discussed in the very early days of our Masonic journey, and it seems like we just drove right by it and didn't even look. So here's a perfect opportunity. It's rather convenient that all you got to do is put an earbud in your put an earbud on and just listen to us talking about it. But beyond that, do your own exploration, do your own reading, find out more about it. I'm sure if you go to our discussions, you'll hear other brothers' opinion. Participate there, because it doesn't end here. And thank you for all the support you've given the Masonic Roundtable from its inception, and all the support you've given me on the Winding Stairs. I wanted to thank everybody for listening to the shows. And tomorrow marks 3 years from the first day that I published the podcast. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So if the kiddos let me do enough tomorrow, I'll have something special. But the gift that I ask on the Winding Stairs 3rd birthday is make sure that you share with the brothers all our links. Share with them the Millennial Freemason, the 2-Foot Ruler, Whence Came You, Robert, we love you.
Midnight Freemasons.
Midnight Freemasons, all of them, because we are fortunate that today we can just get on the computer and read a little bit, participate in some discussion. We don't have to go through the snow and sit in order to do that. So thank you for listening again, and you can go to thewindingstairs.com to see if you can listen to episode 1, see if there's any improvement, which I doubt.
Awesome. Thank you, Juan.
Thanks.
Jason.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to us tonight. Talk about probably one of the most often, I think, misused terms in Masonry today. It's not the emphasis on charitable works is inherently bad, but it's, I think, an artificial limiting factor to this term and what it means for the fraternity. Because I really like the passage in Brother RJ's Bible that defines charity, saying, look, the idea of charity as charitable works is really only a subset of what that term really means and what it entails. And when you open it out wider into this idea of brotherly, unconditional love as a natural extension of who you are as a Mason, I think it just opens the aperture of your conception of the fraternity in ways that would be surprising, I think, to anyone. So, go in peace, practice charity wherever you can. Remember, as Juan said, in this works with love as well. You need to get your own house in order before you can ever hope to make a lasting, marked, positive difference on others. And that works with love just as much as charitable actions or monetary donations. So we first must love ourselves and those closest to us before we can really model love to those around us and those further out. So I would just leave you all with that thought to think about, because as good men and Masons, it's our duty to make sure that we give ourselves enough credit. And that's been something that's been personally very hard for me over my life. But it's a work in progress, and we just take it one day at a time. So please come and see us in Pennsylvania. We would love to hang out with you. We're going to have some really, really good topics. We're going to have some fun stuff too, some fun surprises that we may or may not delve into a little more in subsequent episodes. So you guys are great. Keep listening, keep emailing us and letting us know what topics you'd like to hear and how we can make the show better. So thanks, Sean. Back to you.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to bring the tone back down a little bit because I have a personal story I want to share with you guys. The day after episode 100, we had a great episode and a lot of build up to that. The immediate day following, we had to put my dog down. We had to end his life early because my dog had spinal cancer, and so it was a very hard decision to make, and I truly didn't appreciate what unconditional love was until I reflected on that moment. There's a quote that's going around the internet that says, my goal in life is to be as good a person as my dog already thinks I am. And I think dog owners can kind of relate to that. So that truly is unconditional love, to know that when you come home through the door, that's the first thing you saw was your dog's nose, just happy to see you. And that's the way we should act to everyone else, all mankind. We should be happy for everyone. We should be sympathetic with everyone, sharing their joys, sharing their losses. And so that's been my moment of reflection that's really kind of brought this theological virtue home to me. So my hope for all of you is that you do practice charity in the literal modern definition. You also improve in your brotherly love to each other and to your Masons, and you increase daily in the unconditional love to all mankind to make this world a better place. With that, thank you for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.